Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Southampton. I am your host, GW15. I am joined by my wonderful co-host as ever, Greg. What a predictable weekend. What a predictable weekend. No one is shocked by the result. I think that there's a couple of things I wanted to say to
Maybe
get out of the way
disappointed
first.
is more.
Yeah, I guess that's it. Big number one. So I've made my opinions and thoughts on Jack Stevens quite clear. I feel really bad for the fact that he's suffering grief and like going through grief after losing somebody, and it's not ideal. But that brings me to a whole point about leadership in general, which is sometimes when you are in a leadership role, it's about knowing when to take a step back. And that's why, for my opinion, that him is not entirely on him. This will be the second time this season that Russell Martin has put somebody into a position when they probably shouldn't have been, that's felt really weird. The first time was the game where Ryan Fraser played like 20-30 minutes before going off ill because he was really ill and should not have played but wanted to play. And what you should do at that point as the manager is say, you shouldn't play. And the same thing with the fact that Jack's deleted his Instagram, sort of like suffered a load of abuse. Some of it, some of it's obviously vitriol and hatred, but a lot of it's just fair criticism of the bloke pulling another man's hair.
It was a really stupid thing to do.
Yeah, it was a really stupid thing to do. And that's probably as a result of emotions running high, and grief can cause a lot of those things. But what I do not like is the fact that the manager's like, well, actually, what you didn't know was happening behind the scenes. I'm like, cool, so why did you not shield your player from that then? Like that, then it wouldn't have been a question. Couple of things are baffling. Second of all, they call in the game that's on tonight El Sacchio. All I know is that the bookies have got to the point now where they think that Russell Martin's next to go. We've kind of tread the line of trying to be in between at this point. However, to turn around and say it's the fans' fault that Joe Lumley, a grown man, decided to kick the ball out because he got shouted at by a bunch of other grown men and not his manager, and then say it's the fans' fault. Fans who have travelled for... So I tried to get to Bournemouth. Right? I tried to get to Bournemouth on Saturday. That's where I was going to spend my afternoon. Unfortunately, I ended up watching this terrible, terrible game. It's caught my language there, but I was supposed to be going to Bournemouth. I managed to make it as far as Southampton Central before a tree fell on the line and I had to get my wife to come and rescue me. That, the fact that there were fans I saw at that point still trying to get up to Birmingham to watch that game. Fans that were still not home at 11 p.m. midnight, and you're mugging them off because you're annoyed.
And it feels a lot like the sort of thing a manager who knows he's on his way out soon resorts to. It actually resonates with me strongly, something that you said on Wednesday, where you said this feels like a turning point. But actually, to me, this sort of has, in my brain, it's set in motion a chain of events that's now irreversible. And I think that, at this point, we've both been of the opinion that we'll probably still have Russell Martin at the end of the season because that's the decision. But I don't think he can turn the fans' opinion back onto his side anymore.
No.
I think that he's lost that battle now, and that's not easy to come back from. Like, short of now going on an unbeaten streak for the rest of the season and qualifying for the Champions League, nothing is going to redeem him in the eyes of the fans. And I've seen that become much more vocal from people who have been much more supportive of him in the past. It's turned a corner, and I think now the writing's on the wall, and it's just a matter of time. And I don't think it'll be this week, but it's coming.
The problem is it feels like what are we supporting? So some of the criticisms I've seen already this week have been sort of, if you can't support us. I've seen some people saying they're turning off the football. If you're not supporting us now, that means you're just not a fan of Southampton. You're a fan of winning. Now as a person who is has been fair weather over the years, it's because I don't have the mental time and energy. And as far as I'm concerned, Southampton Football Club, I do not owe them my support. If they're expecting everyone to turn up week in, week out to watch utter dross, not talk about it, mug them off, charge more and higher prices for things every year, week in, week out, increase the price of season tickets, increase the price of away tickets, all that kind of stuff. And then like to turn around and then just be like, well, you owe them your support. That's fine. I can support them, but I also don't want to watch the same playbook week in, week out.
It's
We have a good
upset.
20, 30 minutes. We then concede, usually due to a stupid mistake. We don't call the player out for the mistake because that's upsetting, and you don't like to call out individual errors because then you'll lose the dressing room. And then what happens is we do about another 60 minutes of nothing, and then there's a bit of added on time. Maybe we're going to do last season and like get a goal at the end, and guess what? Nothing happens. I watched 30 minutes of some football being played, and then I sat there for 60 minutes and watched some stuff happen. It was exciting. They tried to change up the way we played, but it turns out that like I don't think that you could give them if you gave them 100 grand each for every goal they scored, I don't think they'd start scoring even now.
Yeah.
I don't know what, do not know what it is. I think is it a combination of they're so scared to lose the ball that they don't want to shoot because then they lose the ball, but then they lose the ball all the time anyway.
I don't have the answer to what it is, Zach, but what I do know is it is now definitely reached a point where we have not changed and we have stuck to the same routine, and something needs to change. And you know what? Previously, the argument's been, "Oh, who are we going to get and what's going to be better?" But actually, at this point, I think the main thing is that a lot of fans have turned the corner and decided that actually even an unknown is something different, and maybe that's better because we know Russell Martin's playbook inside and out. What's the video of the Russell Martin masterclass where they pass it from the goalkeeper to the middle of the pitch, out wide one side, forward to the middle of the pitch, back out wide the other side, then back to the goalkeeper, then give the ball away to another player. So it's it's the same thing we've seen all season, and it's starting to grate, and there's no versatility or changing it up. And yeah, you're right, fine. We were short of players on Wednesday, and there's no, and Villa are a tough team, but
Yeah.
again, it was a stupid goal to give away from a mistake. We now, by the way, have the record. I don't know if you've seen this of the joint top. No, in fact, we are now clear because we have 10 goals that we have gifted to opponents this season, which is the record of all time, anyone who's ever done it in the Premier League across a whole season. And we're only not even halfway through. So,
which says that we
you haven't
can't play the
learned
style.
anything. Yeah.
We can't play that. You can't say we've hopefully learned something from this. We can't say we're going to go on and build from anything because every week it is the same thing. It's the
That's the
same
thing. I
mistakes,
think
the
you
same
can say
personnel
that
to
at the
sell.
start, but at this point, that time's run
Can't
out.
say
Like,
that
it's
now, man.
no, not anymore at all. And that's what I'm saying. Something's got to change because, and it's not going to be Russell Martin. He's made that abundantly clear. He's not going to change his approach.
I just
Maybe we need
don't
to get
understand
someone in who
why.
can actually play to the player's strengths
I
because
don't understand
clearly
why.
it's not this system.
What does he think? What does it? I genuinely, it would be fascinating to just have like an unrecorded, just off the record conversation with him as to genuinely he thinks that one game all of a sudden it's going to click, and it's just because I'm like, how many games do you think we've got before it clicks? Like, imagine we get 30 games in, then suddenly we win 3 games. Like, that's great,
Perfect. Brilliant.
perfect,
That was a win.
absolutely. I've
But
got
like,
so
I'm not saying that we need to resort to hoofball. Like, don't get
no
me wrong. But
in
because for a
between, mate. We're
start,
just not.
our decent forward players are either 4 foot nothing and better at running in behind, or 7'2" and unable to head a ball. So but something needs to change, and
Yeah.
the system needs to change because it's not working at this level with the players that we've got. And it's all very well and good saying, "Oh yeah, but the theory's solid; it will work eventually." But it's not. It's not. And I think that it's pretty clear that we're down now.
Yeah,
I
100%.
don't see. There's still the sliver of hope that there's some other teams around us struggling, but I just think we need to cut our losses and change it to a system that is going to be ready for the Premier League. And we hope.
And it's baffling because he changed the system a few times for games like the playoff finals. He's capable of it. So is it Sports Republic saying they want to play this way, which seems ridiculous because none of them know anything about football really. They brought in a director of football to do that who now is no longer here, who they didn't replace. So it's kind of all on Russell Martin. We've had recruitment where some of it I think is probably down to the recruitment. When you buy a bunch of players from teams that were relegated last season, what did you think was going to happen? Like, no offense to people like Charlie Taylor and Ben Brereton Diaz, but you were in teams that went down last season, and you've come in and it's maybe a bit harsh on Taylor, but like Ben Brereton Diaz just needs to leave in January for his own sanity, because he's terrible, and he's not doesn't offer anything going forward. Every substitution that's made, you just don't think anyone's like, "Ooh, that's an exciting substitution." That's why I think, going back to it a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Diblin being on the bench. At least when he's on the bench, there's something to look forward to.
Yeah, but there was one substitution this weekend that I did enjoy, and that was seeing Sam Ammo on the pitch. But again,
That is
he's a
true.
kid.
Right,
Like,
so let's take a little break. We've all had our rants. We'll listen to some lovely words from our partners at Zencaster, and then maybe we'll talk about the game.
yeah.
So it was actually a game Saturday.
So here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and Zencaster came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description and learn more about Zencaster.
Right, let's try and examine this game. So I watched all of the game, and I kind of feel sad about it, to be honest. The first half was the same old story. It's 25 minutes in. We're knocking it about. We almost get it in.
Looks like we had some
Manning has a
half-decent
good shot.
chances.
Yeah, we had some good shots. Lumley made some decent saves.
But before we talk about chances, I guess there's one stat that's worth pointing out, and that's for the second time this season, an entire game with 0 shots on target.
Yeah.
And as pointed out before, your philosophy and your tactics can be what they like, but if you're not going to kick the ball at the goal, you're not going to win games.
You're right. If you do not kick the ball into the net or even at the net,
if you break
you are
football
never
down
going to
to
win.
its simplest terms, that is the only thing really you need to do, and we didn't do it at all.
The conditions were horrific. I'll give them that. No one wanted to play that game, but then the conditions are just as bad for Villa. Nathan Wood
Seemed all right.
He started a solid game. It's kind of like, oh well, that means that we actually have some all right centre backs going forward.
Put in some decent blocks in the second half towards the end of the game when he was left stranded in no man's land.
Yeah, where I'm at is at least we're going to have a lot of centre backs when we go back down, right? So that would be nice. But yeah, same old. But yeah, I think it was summed up saying, oh, like Southampton have been the better side, but Villa are more dangerous. And it's like, even my wife sort of makes jokes about it whenever she does get to watch Saints whenever it's on TV, and like we'll watch sort of the ball get almost to like the final third, but there's just like it never feels like we're scoring ever. I think Carl Walker-Peters does his best. Everyone else just kind of stands around the goal, but we all holding hands.
I mean, I think our closest effort, which obviously didn't register as a shot on target, came from, of all people, Ryan Manning in the first half. And that, took a deflection and pinged off, and it didn't even go out of play. But it's, again, all of our goals not coming from our strikers. Cameron Archer had half a chance that got blocked twice that I can remember, but I mean, I didn't watch the full game because I was unfortunately otherwise occupied, or maybe fortunately, but I was following along, and I watched the last 20 minutes, and I've caught up with the extended highlights, the long version, but actually nothing really sums it up more for me than this quote from the Sky Sports News live commentary feed of the game in the 88th minute that just says Southampton have the ball but going absolutely nowhere with it. It's their kind of thing.
It was a messy game. We'll get into the tactics of it tomorrow, but we managed to go a pretty solid sort of almost 70 minutes without a booking, and then we got 3 or 4, bravery. So that's good. I think Amameu had a really good game. Him getting on, he had like an instant impact, which was wild. That like we've been bringing on people like Sulemana for him all season, and then people. And the thing is like I don't even know at this point if it's the players either. Like I don't know what to think anymore, because it's just week in week out it's dire. I think that Chelsea game really put the nail in the coffin as to we can play like this, because we just can't. and now everyone knows we can't, and then every other opposition knows that we can't. We all know that we can't.
Yeah.
And then like you bring on off players, and you're never really excited as to who we bring on. You're never really excited as to who we bring off. They tried to switch the formation around. Kind of was okay, but again, like I think that 0 shots on target, like you just can't. I you can't defend it. Surely, I don't get it. And like him saying it's madness if they finish on 5 points because there's some decisions that have gone against us here, and there. And I'm like, yeah, but do you genuinely think that if we'd like won at Brighton, that would have changed everything else? Like this is what I don't understand is that it's like, okay, we might have 4 more points. Is it the mentality then? Because the fact of the matter is even he's getting frustrated with the players now because he's like, I don't know what else to do other than to tell them to play.
I almost had this exact same discussion with someone yesterday, and it was like they literally said to me, "It's like, but you can't blame Wolves on him because it was a terrible VAR decision. It should never have been disallowed." And I was like, I agree, it was a terrible VAR decision, and the goal should have been allowed. But also, at that point, we were already 1-0 behind and equalising, and outside of that, we didn't have a shot on target. That's now twice that's happened this season. And so that has got to be problem number one to solve. Stop passing the ball to the opponent and kick the ball at the goal. Like, we just really need to go back to basics. And
that's the thing. Is it?
Our signings, clearly a lot of them not worked out. We've had some brilliant ones, right? Matty Fernandez, unbelievable. But these are professional footballers, like who know how to pass a ball and kick a ball at a goal, or they wouldn't be in the position they're in playing in the Premier League for us. And so it has to be the way they're being instructed to play, because I can pass a ball and kick a ball at a goal, not to that same standard, but it's not rocket science. It's kicking a bag of air around a field.
You're not wrong though. This is just the thing that's mad about it. And like again, like there's not even really much to say. I'll sum it up with a chant, which is how blank must you be? It's only 1-0. And as soon as that started being pulled out, I laughed because that we're now at that point of the season, right? Where like I'd love to talk in depth about the game, but like it's just there's nothing in depth for us to talk about.
Yeah.
And this is the problem. It's people like, oh, well, you're not a supporter. I was like, no, I love Southampton. I wouldn't do this podcast daily talking about this if I didn't. But that doesn't mean that I can't be like, like if your kid annoys you, right? Doesn't mean you can't be upset by it. And that's kind of how I am at the moment. And I don't. It's a combination of things. You're seeing it all across the board. Is it just the manager? Probably not. Is it the board? Probably yes. Sports Republic transfer business has been pretty horrific. You're hoping that they've matured as they've gone on, but then they maybe haven't because we bought a bunch of bargain signings. But then at the same time, you would have probably at the beginning of the season taken Ben Brereton Diaz because he scored a load last time. So you're like, oh, maybe he'll score a load this time. But there are some risks we've taken.
First, right? He was like,
Ross Stewart was like Ings. Ings was injury prone. He just ended up being great for us, and then since he's gone, has gone on to do nothing. So there are just sometimes, unfortunately, signings don't work out, and that's one of the things that I think hasn't been ideal. But also, like it feels like the structure of the footballing side of things at this point is now just Russell Martin, and I worry that because obviously Jason Wilcox went, one of the things they've got is if they do get rid of Russell Martin, how does the entirety of the footballing side of their footballing business work? And this is what's wild, right? Is it feels like they've kind of forgotten that their core product is football.
Yeah.
And they need to like pay attention to how that works. And it's like, again, I always talk about, I know this seems insane, but I always preferred being under Gow because at least then, like, the footballing people really fought hard to deal with, like, the survival situation they had in front of them, right? Like, they basically had a multi-tool to try and deal with what we could. We ended up, going from sort of like Sparky to Hasenhüttl. We had crazy stuff in between, but, like, there was a lot of, dealing with what we've had. Like having Sports Republic like pretend to play football owners is wild because it's like you just never hear anything from them. They keep talking about this plan, but no one really knows the plan.
The problem, right?
Russell's now losing the plot. Like
because if they categorically came out tomorrow and released a club statement and said we're sticking with Russell Martin until the end of his contract and that's the end of it, it's not up for discussion, the noise would simmer down. Look, it would still be there because he is rightly so upset the fans, but at least we'd know where we stood. And you're right. What's lacking is the constant lack of communication. It's crazy.
It's the fact that it's the lack of communication, but also it's like, okay, well, if you've got a plan for the club, you feel like if there wasn't the communication, you'd still think from the outside looking in there would be like an obvious. You'd be able to see the structure taking place around, like this whole multi-club threading. Other than like them getting rid of all of our scouts way back when, which seems to have been a terrible decision, it's like you can't even piece together anything that's going on outside of that. Like it's not like we've suddenly, like back in the old days, we'd be like, we've put up there's a new LinkedIn advert for like a head of recruitment. You don't hear anything like that anymore. It's almost like they never expected Jason Wilcox to go, have panicked, and now don't know what to do, and have just gone, well, hopefully it'll be all right. But I again, like, I think my friend James Peach summed it up to me perfectly by saying, like, it's kind of weird. You probably should have done another season or two in the championship, and maybe we should have. Like, maybe coming up so early has stunned everybody. They've scrambled, and now we're in the position that
Well, that's
we're
the
in.
thing, right? Because we've talked about it before that maybe going down this season was part of the plan, and obviously, or maybe not part of the plan, but an accepted risk, right? It's like it's pretty likely we're going down this season. Obviously, we're going to give it a go, but our plan consists of the ability to deal with that. But we're not in the board meetings. Nobody comes out and tells us anything, and it's ridiculous to expect someone, the cost of going to the games and the season tickets, like.
It's the human side of it that is, I think, completely lost on these people sometimes, and I think that's where, as much as I don't want to march out into the streets over it, I think there are far more important things in the world. But like, I get it. I get why people are that level of angry. I just don't think that like our fan base, you're riding high off of promotion not 6 months ago, and now all of a sudden it's like we're in whatever position, 7, I think, at this point, and now we're in whatever this is, and it's just I think the rapid decline and like the way it's happened is just baffling to everybody. You've got like our top goal scorer for last season has managed to score a kind of a goal from open play and a penalty, and everyone else has been, we got a few players like Fernandez that will disappear, Kyle that might be sold in January, and the other problem I've got is, as you pointed out before, who's going to want to come if we decide to open up the transfer market? What kind of players are we going to get? Players that are going to accept that they're going to be playing championship football next year. So that's not going to be exactly somebody that like pulls us out of the fire. So
No. I've got
right,
observations and comparisons to make.
we will do that after a message from the Global Sports Podcast Network. The Global Sports Podcast Network is changing the face of football podcasting with dedicated daily content for every Premier League team, women's football, fantasy football, and a daily Premier League wrap-up broadcasted in 5 different languages. This is your one-stop shop for your daily football fix. Find GSPN wherever you find your usual podcasts.
I think I've figured it out. I think
Okay.
I think I know why it's so triggering, and the problem is that it's the same on the field and the same off the field. We've talked about it on the show before. When we're 1-0 or 2-1 down, and in the 80th minute, there's no outward look that there's any panic or stress. Or urgency to get that matter resolved. Just stick with the system, knock it around the back. There's no response to that at all, and it's the same off the pitch, right? This is dire. We are on track to be the worst Premier League team in history, and there's no
pushing panic
response, no
buttons, and it's almost like that's
urgency,
what you want.
no. And like, I'm not suggesting that we, pull the fire alarms and run screaming blue murder and panic, but like, settle the nerves, right? Just put something out and communicate that we don't need to panic. This is all part of the plan, and it's an awful plan. And if it is the part of the plan, I still think people would be upset. But
It's
needs
better than leaving us in limbo, and also leaving, a young manager to take the absolute brunt of it, and rightly or wrongly, it's just awful, because if he goes anytime soon, it's already turning sour, and now we lose out instead of him going earlier on, where like a Nigel Atkins Pochettino situation where everyone was shocked by it, but everyone thanks Nigel Atkins for what he did. It's going to be one of those situations now where people are going to think and remember what's been going on recently more than they're going to think of sort of that day in Wembley. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're right. The panic and urgency on the pitch, the whole point, the whole thing they wanted to do after the sort of tumultuous relegation season last time round was to kind of steady that panic and not have people sort of panic. And we had games like that in the Championship where we weren't panicking and then we would score in the 93rd, 94th minute. But that just doesn't happen for us anymore. And so exactly, I think that the key thing that you pointed out that's needed, and the key thing that everyone wants to see ultimately, is change. And it might not be great. Change, you could never predict if change is going to be good or bad. You can't predict that, but what you can do is try and set up circumstances to make it successful. And if it is that he needs to bite the bullet and change the way he plays, happy days. I don't think
That's
it's
just
going to
never
happen.
going to happen. That's the problem.
So
Because if that was going to happen, it would have happened by now. And I think if that had happened, and even if it had happened and we were still in this position with points, I think there would be more patience and acceptance. But it's the almost arrogance to stick to that system and say that it will come good and it will work when it is not going to work with this
no.
group of players. So we need something that is going to be less embarrassing.
Oh, what do we do, Greg? How do we live our life going forward?
Well, I don't know, but I'm sure that we can find some points of tactics to improve upon that we can talk
I'm
about
sure we
tomorrow. I'm
can.
sure.
So
I already have several, so
I think one of the good things is that we've got a little bit of a gap between games now, right?
yeah. Apparently, it's 7 o'clock on a Sunday night. That's another joke. Thanks,
So
BP Sports.
yeah, so don't get me wrong, that is absolutely terrible, but I think it gives everybody a little bit of distance, because I think that having the game Wednesday and having that reaction on the Saturday, everybody is angry, knackered, and mad. And I will sort of correct my complete misinformation where I thought Smallbone was back and he just wasn't picking him, and it turns out his injury's just still persistent. Don't know how that slipped through my radar completely.
That's another thing that upset me from the press conference, because Smallbone was to call him an integral part of the team that's been missing based on the performances we've had from him this season is another level of deluded that I'm not ready to approach yet.
Right, well, somehow the pessimist will have to be the optimist, because I think I've wrecked you today, mate. I'm really sorry. There is a couple of days that you can chill, relax, spend time with your loved ones. It's the festive season. We're having a whale of a time with this podcast. It keeps me sane whilst being a supporter of Southampton. We hope that we entertain you. We hope that you enjoy our analysis. None of us can claim to be experts. I'm just a dude at home that usually plays Football Manager and absolutely loves watching Saints. Greg has significantly more football knowledge than me and actually plays it. But yeah,
we have a good level, though. To be clear, make me an expert.
But we have a good time. So once again, thank you for joining us on this fine Monday. Check us out on all the socials: Twitter, Blue Sky, YouTube, TikTok. Put clips up from all of these little episodes. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us today. We will be back tomorrow with Tactics Tuesday, where we'll try and dissect what happened in that game a little bit more than today, probably. And we'll see you then. So thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.